Kristen Atchison here, and we're still talking about Chapter 15, Relationships with Peers. Now we're going to discuss friendships. So friendships are those emotional bonds between two people, and it really endures over time, and it really is a reflection of the preference to spend time with somebody. The the main part is that affection must be reciprocal, okay? So both people have to have that affection towards each other. It can't just be one directional. It needs to be reciprocal. It needs to have both individuals engaged in those feelings. And these relationships really evolve as children age. There's different determinants of friendship. We see people that are friends tend to be more similar. Not in every aspect, but in some aspects. So we will see, we'll tend to see more same gender relationships. We tend to see relationships where interests are the same. We tend to see relationships where behaviors are the same. We tend to see relationships where ages are the same. We can see this in terms of popularity or socioeconomic status. But it doesn't necessarily have to be across all of those things, okay? So you may, and we'll see that relationships somewhat change as we develop as well. So our first friendships really in early childhood are they're really important for emotional and social development, but it's really just, in preschool, it's just, are you having fun with that person? Are you sharing? Is that person being nice to you? Is that person sharing toys? When my daughter was in preschool and I'd ask her questions about her friends, I'm like, well, why is so-and-so your friend? And she would say, oh, because they're nice to me. Oh, because they shared a toy with me. I have fun with that person. So these are the kinds of foundations that young children really are using to form relationships. This is not a long-term trust relationship. This is not a mutual trust. This is not that level of intimacy that we see in later childhood and adulthood. What it really is going on here is, again, this pleasurable play. So when children are very young, parents really have an influence on the relationship by arranging situations for play. So in preschool, parents are arranging where their children are going to preschool. They're arranging play settings outside of preschool. So again, they're having direct influences because they can arrange these situations. The term play date is when two parents decide that their two kids should meet and play. Children tend to have, that have larger social networks, tend to be more socially skilled. So think back to our better the input, the better the output. The more opportunities children are getting to engage in social interaction, the more we'll see that these children are socially skilled. Parents also have an indirect role in this. Their attachment style will be reflective of how children look at relationships, how children engage in relationships according to attachment theory. And so we'll see that that'll takes a role. Also, the parent-child play, how the parent plays with the child, will also teach the child how to play with others. And so we see that children that have secure attachment really have more responsive, harmonious relationships with others. They tend to be warmer. They tend to be more supportive friendships. So parents are playing a role in this, both in terms of physically setting up relationships, but also in their relationship with their child is, again, that template for the child's relationships with other people. In middle childhood, this is when personal qualities and trust start to become important. Children become more selective in choosing their friends, and they start to choose friends that are similar to themselves. Now, this is definitely a developmental progression, okay? So you can have one of these things going on, but not another. For example, my daughter's in first grade. She's definitely seen now that trust is an important component of friendship. And she talks about people she will trust with things and people she won't trust with things. But if you ask her who her friends are, she says her entire class is her best friend because she likes all of them and she has fun with all of them. So she's kind of in this mixed place between this full-on middle childhood where it's personal qualities and trust-based, and this younger activities where it really is who's nice to me, who plays with me, these sorts of things. These friendships start to be the ones that can last several years. And what's important here is for a relationship to last several years, the individuals have to learn how to resolve disputes. And we'll see that that's a very important skill that, again, friendships are giving us a template to be able to use for later situations. We see that the type of friends that children choose really can influence their development. Children that have aggressive friends will often engage in more antisocial effects and more antisocial acts. So it kind of really exacerbates an issue. The issue there is, are you picking aggressive friends because you're already aggressive? And if so, that additional added of the other person being aggressive can again magnify this. So it's not just an issue of self-selecting. This child was aggressive, so they picked a aggressive friend, but both that child being aggressive and this friend being aggressive really again amplifies that aggression. We'll see in adolescence, we're really going to start to see fewer and fewer friends, or in terms of best friends, okay? This is really where intimacy and loyalty, this is really where we double down on trust, okay? And we double down on intimacy. We see a lot more self-disclosure happening here, including sharing of private thoughts and sharing of private ideas within these friendship relationships. Friends that are similar tend to get more similar, okay? So again, we're tending to pick friends that are similar to us in the first place, but as we spend more time together, we become even more and more similar. And this can be in terms of many different facets, including the identity status that we talked about in the identity chapter, aspirations, their goals in life, politics, deviant behavior as well. So we can go kind of different directions with this. But we see, again, kind of a narrowing of the number of friends. So again, preschool, we're going to have a really, really wide filter. Everybody is fair game. But as we start to hit into middle childhood, we'll start to narrow down based on the activities and the preferences of the friends. Trust becomes important roles. And by the time we get to adolescence, this funnel's narrowed down even more. And we really are focusing on loyalty and intimacy and choosing our friends. In adolescent, other features of adolescent friendships include things like co-rumination. And ruminating is when you're mulling over something in your head. And typically, this is not a healthy thing to engage in for yourself. Well, teenagers take it to the next level and will do it together so they can co-ruminate over these things. So when you hear about things like suicide pacts, these are functions of co-rumination where these children and these adolescents are repeatedly going over these problems and these negative emotions. We see that co-rumination is an important component of high-quality friendships, but again, it can really exacerbate issues of anxiety and depression and can really have very long-term or very negative consequences. So it is something that you kind of need to kind of watch for in terms of these kind of adolescent relationships. We see a relational aggression as a thing when conflicts start to rise. This is one of the reasons that we see sometimes girls, adolescent girls, tend to have shorter relationships because they tend to engage in more relational aggression to begin with. So when there is a conflict, that it's not going to be the way that aggressive behavior is going to be handled is going to be relational. So kind of I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm going to share your secrets to somebody else. Remember, this is adolescence, so we've done a lot of self-disclosure. We have a lot of trust and intimacy, which gives a lot of opportunities for relational aggression, a lot of opportunities to take advantage of that trust and of that loyalty. We see the internet really can contribute to friendships as well. In a survey of 10 to 17-year-olds engaged in messaging, they found that messaging really can support the closeness of a friendship. We see that messaging and even things like social media can really promote self-disclosure. And we see that self-disclosure is an important component of friendships and an important component of relationships. Also, the internet can really be used to explore issues that or look into things that the adolescent is interested in or questioning, and they can do it in a really less threatening environment. Instead of having to ask mom what something is or what about something, they can Google it, and sometimes that can be helpful because if they know about good sources, they can find good information. And so again, this can be a less threatening situation if a peer says something and the other child doesn't know what that is, instead of saying I don't know what that is, and kind of getting some of that social negative feedback. I can't believe you don't. What do you mean you don't know what that is? Again, the internet can allow an opportunity for this. So these children, this is the percent of youth that were had high parent conflicts, high delinquencies, or high internet use. And we saw that really close online friends were really a helpful thing. And a majority of them were having these close online friends. The benefit of friends, it's a really opportunity to explore self and to form those deep understanding of another. So it's an opportunity for that exploration that we talked about in terms of that identity chapter. It's an opportunity to kind of to look at different things from that different perspective. Open and honest communication really supports this. In terms of self-concept, in terms of perspective taking, remember we talked about how that being able to take the perspective of others is very, very important to social relationships and to be able to participate social engagement. And again, play allowed for that, but also these really intimate, loyal friendships allowed opportunities for those as well. Again, in terms of attachment theory, these are used as a foundation for future intimate relationships too. So an intimate friend is someone that you have an attachment to as well. And so again, the way attachment theory is going to say is anyone that you form this attachment to, these become blueprints for future relationships. It's very helpful in terms of coping. Friendships can be opportunities to promote empathy, sympathy, and really pro-social behavior. And it can really improve one's involvement in school. People who enjoy school more are more likely to stay at school. So we'll see dropout rates decreased for individuals that have friends at school, both in terms of adolescence and high school, but also in terms of college. So we'll see that, again, this engagement with the people that go to that school is a reason to kind of do better at that school because you want to stay. So one of the reasons that college campuses tend to push involvement on campus is because they know this. The more engaged you are with your peers on campus, the more likely you are to want to stay here on campus. And again, that's one of the things that universities are measured on, is how many students that they graduate, who start as freshmen and graduate. So again, this relationships at school can be very helpful for academics as well. Again, these friendships can be based on common ground activities. Communication is really, really important in these, and again, can give children opportunities to really learn through these and get better at these things. This can include that important exchanging of information that we talked about, that conflict resolution, and that self-disclosure. All of these things are really important for a strong friendship. We see that successful friendships, they have to be able to handle these conflicts in different ways. They have to be able to resolve these conflicts equitably, so fairly, and they have to be able to engage in these reasoning skills to be able to do so. And again, this level of intimacy and self-disclosures is really, really important for a successful long-term relationship. If you think of who your best friends are, there's a level of intimacy there. They know things about you that you wouldn't tell someone that you don't have that level of intimacy for. So again, this self-disclosure is a really important part of that friendship formation. We see that having friends is associated with higher self-esteem, and that this social support is really, really beneficial in terms of coping. They can provide emotional support, so that's, again, kind of just that. When you feel bad, they're there to help you feel better. Instrumental support, your car broke down, they offered you a ride. That's an instrumental support. provide information for you. So I had a question about something, and I texted my best friend this morning, and I was like, hey, what should I do about this? Because this is more her area of expertise. And she gave me information. And then I was doing something else and I gave her information. And again, that companionship, that importance, that feeling that we need to be involved with others, that need to belong. Again, friendships are supporting this. Finally, these positive peer relationships and friendships can really be protective against a family adversity. So when there is a problem going on in the family, these really healthy friendships can really, again, be protective of that. Again, we see friendships tend to promote school engagement, which is, again, protective against this family adversity. And they can help modify that parent's relationships in terms of how giving the child opportunities to talk about these things in healthy situations, and in a healthy way, to kind of calm down before they interact with the parent, to again kind of have someone that they can go and talk to about this, so that they don't feel isolated. So again, we see that friendships can really be protective when the family situation is not great either. So this ends our conversation about friendships. Thanks.